A beauty queen, a brutal murder, and a town divided. When 19-year-old Nona Dirksmeyer was found bludgeoned to death in her Russellville apartment, suspicion immediately turned to her boyfriend, Kevin Jones. Others pointed to Gary Dunn, a neighbor with a violent criminal history. Police believed they had the right man. Twice. But the juries didn't agree. Nearly 2 decades later, the case remains unsolved. Was the investigation flawed? Did the real killer walk free? Or did conflicting evidence bury the truth? Before we get into the suspects, let's take a closer look at who Nona Dirksmeyer was and why her death continues to haunt an entire community. Join me for another ride through the strange, odd, and mysterious here at Odd Mystery Stories. Nona Dirksmeyer grew up in Russellville, Arkansas, and quickly became someone the community couldn't forget. Warm, upbeat, and compassionate, she stood out for her kindness and her drive. At 19, she was already Miss Petit Jean Valley, a dedicated music education major at Arkansas Tech University, and a regular voice in her church choir. She spent countless hours volunteering to support women who had experienced abuse, a reflection of how deeply she cared for others. From the outside, Nona's life seemed full of promise, but behind the accomplishments were real pressures. Between college, music, pageants, and volunteering, she carried a heavy load. Friends noticed signs of exhaustion, though she rarely let it show. Her determination kept her going, even when the balance became overwhelming. Her long-term relationship with Kevin Jones, her high school sweetheart, was another source of tension. When Kevin transferred to the University of Arkansas, the distance exposed growing cracks. Friends recalled arguments, emotional strain, and Nona's inner conflict, torn between her own ambitions and the expectations tied to their relationship. What was once a comfort had become complicated. Russellville had seen tragedy before. The 1996 triple homicide still lingered in their local memory, but Nona's murder hit differently. She wasn't a stranger. She was a beloved daughter, a familiar face on campus, and a rising star in her community. Her death reopened old wounds and reminded everyone how quickly everything can fall apart. In the days leading up to her murder, Nona had been attending rehearsals, preparing for finals, and looking forward to the holidays. She was seen laughing with friends and helping at church. No one suspected that her life and the life of the town was about to change forever. December 15, 2005, the day everything changed in Russellville. That morning, Nona texted her boyfriend Kevin as usual. He was finishing exams at the University of Arkansas, and they planned to see each other that evening. But by midday, Nona stopped responding to texts and calls. Kevin grew concerned. Unable to reach her, Kevin asked his friend Ryan Whiteside, who lived nearby, to check on her apartment. Ryan found Nona's car parked out front, but no one answered the door. He called Kevin back, uneasy. Nona's silence didn't feel right. Worried, Kevin and his mother, Janice, drove to Nona's apartment. They knocked on the front door. No response. Around back, they found the sliding glass door unlocked. What they saw inside was horrifying. Nona lay naked on the floor in a pool of blood. Kevin rushed to her, but it was already too late. She had suffered stab wounds to her chest and shoulder, and a slashed neck and blunt force trauma to her face. The coroner later estimated the death occurred between noon and 1 p.m. Police arrived quickly. The scene was brutal, yet strangely controlled. There were signs of a violent struggle, but her wallet and phone were untouched. Investigators found a bloody palm print on a lamp near her body and a condom wrapper on the kitchen counter, its origin unexplained. Nothing had been stolen. There was no sign of forced entry. It felt personal. From the start, the police focused on those closest to Nona. Kevin, as the one who found her, became the immediate person of interest. His every word and action that day would be scrutinized and debated across Russellville. Suspicion set in quickly, dividing the town and shaping the course of the case. Kevin Jones and Nona Dirksmeyer had the kind of high school relationship many admired. He was a baseball player, and she was a pageant queen. At first, they seemed inseparable, but as college life evolved, so did their relationship. Friends noticed growing tension. Nona confided that Kevin could be possessive and that their arguments were becoming more frequent. She talked about ending things, but struggled to let it go. When Kevin discovered Nona's body, police zeroed in on him almost immediately. He'd arrived with his mother and a friend, something officers found odd. When he ran to Nona and tried to perform CPR, investigators questioned whether he'd contaminated the scene. What some saw as panic, police saw as suspicious. Kevin walked detectives through his version of events and agreed to a videotaped reenactment, but investigators focused on his demeanor, claiming he showed too little emotion. To some, he looked stunned, to others, cold. That video would later be used in court, dissecting from every angle. Hoping to clear his name, Kevin took a polygraph, but the results didn't help him. The examiner, an uncertified, inexperienced officer, claimed Kevin gave multiple false answers. His defense argued the test was unreliable and improperly administered. Still, the damage was done. The failed polygraph added weight to the growing case against him. No DNA tied Kevin to the scene. The bloody palm print near Nona's body didn't match him. The condom wrapper in the kitchen wasn't his, but police stayed focused on his behavior and their own instincts. On March 31, 2006, Kevin Jones was arrested and charged with capital murder. The town was split. Some believed justice was finally coming. Others feared the wrong man was behind bars. As the trial neared, the community braced itself for what would become one of Russellville's most polarizing legal battles. Inside the Russellville courthouse, Kevin Jones's trial drew intense attention. The prosecution claimed he killed Nona in a jealous rage, pointing to their troubled relationship and his behavior after finding her body. The defense argued he was a grieving boyfriend caught in a rush to judgment. As the trial played out, it split the town. Some believed Kevin was guilty. Others believed he was being railroaded. Central to the prosecution's case was a bloody handprint found on the bulb of a floor lamp, allegedly the murder weapon. A forensic analyst testified the print matched Kevin, but the defense countered that Kevin had touched the lamp only while trying to revive Nona, not during an attack. What police saw as aggression, the defense framed as desperation. The failed polygraph resurfaced in court. Prosecutors leaned on it to cast doubt in Kevin's truthfulness. But the defense reminded jurors the test was administered by an uncertified officer and had no scientific reliability, especially under emotional distress. The defense challenged the timeline head-on. Witnesses, including Kevin's grandmother, placed him miles away during the critical window. Prosecutors claimed that Nona was killed. Surveillance footage backed up that alibi. The timeline, they argued, simply didn't fit. Mistakes in the investigation also came to light. Police never processed fingerprints from the key areas like the back door or blinds, and DNA from a condom wrapper in the kitchen didn't match Kevin, yet the prosecution never explained it. After 8 hours of deliberation, the jury couldn't reach a verdict. A mistrial was declared. Prosecutors initially planned to retry the case, but eventually dropped the charges. Kevin walked free after spending 18 months in jail. The trial left Russellville reeling. Some felt justice had failed Nona. Others saw Kevin as a victim of a flawed investigation. But the case wasn't closed, and a single piece of overlooked evidence, quietly waiting in storage, was about to change everything. With Kevin Jones cleared, investigators took a fresh look at the evidence and a new suspect came into focus, Gary William Dunn. Dunn had lived just a few doors from Nona Dirksmeyer's apartment. He had been briefly interviewed back in 2005, but police quickly moved on, locking their attention on Kevin. Years later, that oversight would come back into sharp focus. Dunn's past was deeply troubling. In 2002, he ambushed a female jogger with a tree branch, threatening to kill her. She escaped, and Dunn served 19 months for second-degree battery. His record showed a pattern: sudden, violent attacks on women, unprovoked and brutal. It was a pattern disturbingly similar to the way Nona had been killed. The turning point came from evidence long overlooked: the condom wrapper found in Nona's kitchen. Advancing DNA testing, available during the original investigation, linked the wrapper to Dunn. His was the only match. That discovery shifted him from a background figure to the prime suspect. Given his history and proximity to Nona's apartment, police now had a suspect they couldn't ignore. But problems remained. Aside from the wrapper, there were no fingerprints, no witnesses, no confession. The timeline of when Dunn's DNA landed on the wrapper couldn't be confirmed. Could it have been left there before the murder? Was the connection circumstantial? The case, while stronger than before, was far from solid. In October of 2008, Gary Dunn was charged with capital murder. News of the arrest reopened wounds and rekindled debate. The prosecution leaned heavily on the DNA evidence. The defense insisted it wasn't enough, arguing that Dunn's criminal history alone couldn't substitute for real proof. For Nona's family, it felt like hope. For others in Russellville, it was deja vu. Another suspect, another trial, and still no certainty. As the town prepared for what came next, one question remained. Would this trial finally deliver justice, or would it unravel like the one before it? Gary Dunn's first trial began in April of 2010, with prosecutors building their case around a single piece of evidence: his DNA on a condom wrapper found in Nona Dirksmeyer's kitchen. They also pointed to Dunn's past, specifically a 2002 assault where he attacked a female jogger with a tree branch. His ex-wife testified that she had seen him stalking the apartment complex before Nona's death. The prosecution painted Dunn as violent, opportunistic, and the only logical suspect. But the defense wasted no time challenging that narrative. They argued the condom wrapper had been mishandled and contaminated, and that the presence of Dunn's DNA suggested it could have been there days before the murder. A relative testified that Dunn was at home during the suspected time of the killing. And crucially, a detective confirmed Dunn was left-handed, contradicting the medical examiner's conclusion that the killer was likely a right-handed person based on Nona's neck wounds. There was no murder weapon, no eyewitnesses, no security footage placing Dunn at the scene. Just a single forensic link undercut by uncertainty. The defense also exposed glaring investigative missteps. Police had never dusted the back of the sliding door, believed to be the likely escape route for fingerprints. They had focused almost entirely on Kevin Jones early on, overlooking other potential leads. The jury struggled. Some believed Dunn was guilty, but too many questions remained. The result? A hung jury and a mistrial. In March of 2011, Dunn was tried again, this time with prosecutors seeking the death penalty. But the case had not grown stronger. The same arguments played out, and the same flaws were highlighted. Investigators still had no new evidence. Another round of tense deliberations, the second jury also deadlocked. Jurors told prosecutors afterwards they believed Dunn was guilty, but also that the police had messed this whole case up. In May of 2011, prosecutors dropped all charges. After 2 failed trials, they were out of options. Gary Dunn walked free. For Nona's family, it was devastating. 2 suspects had gone to trial. 2 juries had failed to convict. The community was left with frustration, anger, and an even deeper sense of injustice. Years passed. Gary Dunn faded from the headlines, but the shadow of the case lingered. In Russellville, people began to wonder if the truth had ever been really within reach, or if it had been lost long ago. In December of 2018, Gary Dunn was back in custody. This time it wasn't for Nona's case. He was arrested for attempted kidnapping and indecent exposure after 3 women reported being approached and threatened by a man in a blue pickup truck. Their descriptions matched Dunn. and police issued a bolo. Within hours, officers in Dardanelles spotted his vehicle and made the arrest. This wasn't just any suspect, it was the same man who had twice stood trial for Nona's murder, and now, more than a decade later, he was once again accused of targeting women, this time in chilling familiar ways. Dunn's violent history was already well known. In 2002, he attacked a female jogger with a tree branch and threatened to kill her. Now, in 2018, he was again tied to a predatory behavior. The similarities between these cases and the brutality of Nona's murder reignited public suspicion. Many in Russellville wondered if he was capable of these crimes, he had also gotten away with murder. At the time of Nona's death, Dunn had been on parole, a fact that only deepened community unease. Following his 2018 arrest, Dunn was held on a $100,000 bond, then transferred to a state facility for violating parole. In November of 2019, he accepted a plea deal, 15 years for attempted kidnapping with 10 years suspended. Under Arkansas law, he must serve 70% before parole eligibility, meaning he could be released in just a few years. To many, that sentence felt like a temporary fix. A dangerous man was behind bars, but it didn't answer the question that still haunted Russellville. Did Gary Dunn kill Nona? Despite the renewed spotlight, prosecutors still lacked the evidence to try him again. The condom wrapper DNA placed him in her apartment, but there were no fingerprints, no confession, and no witnesses. Without new proof, the case couldn't move forward. Dunn's 2018 conviction brought Nona's story back into the headlines, but it didn't bring resolution. For her family, friends, and a community long divided, the wound remained open. The pain of unanswered questions and a justice system that came up short continued to cast its shadow. Time hasn't softened the questions around Nona's murder. Every December 15th, her family and friends gather at her grave, candles flickering in the cold, marking another year without answers. Nona's mother, Charlotte, has never let her daughter's memory fade. Her room remains untouched, pageant gowns and sheet music still in place. Charlotte organizes annual vigils, speaks in schools, advocates for victims' rights, and continues to push for renewed investigation. For her, the fight for the truth is personal and permanent. Russellville has known tragedy before. The 1996 triple homicide left lasting scars, and Nona's case reopened many of them. Local media still runs anniversary stories. Her photo still appears in shop windows. Her name remains part of the town's identity, a symbol of both promise lost and justice denied. Speculation hasn't faded either. Some still believe Kevin Jones was involved, pointing to his behavior after Nona's death and his failed polygraph. Others remain convinced Gary Dunn is responsible, citing his violent history and the DNA on the condom wrapper. And then there are those who believe the real killer was never caught at all. Frustration lingers over how the investigation unfolded. Early missteps, like the failure to test fingerprints on the sliding door blinds and delayed DNA testing, left holes that may never be filled. The DNA found didn't tie directly to the night of the murder, and without a confession or witness, the case gradually grew cold. Occasional tips still trickle in, anonymous calls, rumors, even alleged confessions, but none have broken through the deadlock. The case remains open in name, but real progress feels more distant with each passing year. What remains isn't just the mystery of who killed Nona, it's the sense that justice slipped through the cracks, again and again. 2 men were tried, both walked free, and nearly 2 decades later, the truth still feels out of reach. So the questions endure. How did this happen? Why did every effort to solve it fall short? And what does it mean when a town never gets the answers it so desperately needs? Looking back, one thing is clear. Early tunnel vision and mishandled evidence fractured this case from the start. 2 men, Kevin Jones and Gary Dunn, stood trial. Neither was convicted. And over 2 decades later, we're still left with the same haunting question. Was it Kevin, Gary, or someone investigators never even considered? So what do you think happened on that December night? And after everything you've heard, who do you believe killed Nona? If you believe her story still matters, share this video. Join the conversation in the comments below. Nona's family gathers every December, still searching for answers. Let's help keep her memory alive and the search for justice moving forward. Hey, thanks so much for watching this story. If you're into true crime and odd mysteries like this one, I'd love for you to check out my new e-reading list over at bookshop.com. It's filled with gripping thrillers and mystery books I think you'll love. And if you'd like to support the channel and help keep these stories coming, you can join me on Patreon. Even buying me a virtual cup of coffee makes a huge difference. I truly appreciate your support. You'll find both links right below in the comments section. See you in the next one. Thank you.